once one is a he's by himself, or she's by herself. She's not thinking about the we, because this person, the feeling that this person has is that this person is he or she, individual, no God, no father, no mother, no brother, no sister, no cousins, no nephew, nothing, no family. This is a person with a single mind views of life, because this person just is he, is individual. Because you are individual and you don't think about anyone else, you feel just like you are in this world and that you are empty. But any time that you say we, the word we represents you and God, you and your father, you and your mother, you and your sister, or you with your grandfather, you with your grandmother. Anytime that you count yourself as we, always you are with someone, that you can be able to talk, that you can be able to discuss your thoughts, that you can be able to have a conversation, express yourself, and feel just like you, that you're not empty, because you are a we. Because a we is never empty.
If someone told me, 20 years ago that in some way I'd be giving a talk in a spiritual center, in some way with my dad, I would not believe it. Two people could not have been different in so many ways. Just starting off, you see I'm like 5'4", right? My dad was 6'2" and 275. So that's just the beginning of the differences. But for whatever reasons, the universe decided to make he and I a we, just like you and your family and your friends and all of us. In fact, in a world where we kind of worship individuality, I like to call them individuals. In a world of individuals, we is the only revolution. There's no other revolution but we. And so before I start saying some words from my Kindle here, I want to invite us to be a we. I want us to hold a space that whatever comes out of my mouth today is not just something that I feel like I have to say because I just got to get something off my chest, but it's a collective expression of all that we are. All of us in this room right now, all of us outside of this room, out in the world, all the people that we agree with and all the people that we disagree with, because ultimately that's the truth. We are a we. And so let's sit in silence for a moment and allow ourselves to be who we truly are. All right. So don't we have an interesting relationship with silence? Many of us fear silence. We feel like it's the absence of doing or being, all the things that make us feel alive, the activity. But what if silence is the cradle for all that is, all that you are, all that we are? And what if in that scripture passage in the Bible where it says that in the beginning there was this void, right? What if that void was the cradle for everything? And what if in that moment that God, they say in that tradition, created all things, what if you were already in mind? Everything that you are right now was always there in the beginning. So I like this to be a little teeny bit interactive, so I'm going to ask some questions. You don't have to speak out, but you can raise your hand if you feel like it. How many of you are familiar with that Genesis 1:26 where it says that God said, let us make humanity in our image and according to our likeness? How many people are familiar with that? Yeah? You ever wonder who our is? So, anybody familiar with that word Elohim? Anybody? Elohim? So, you know Elohim is plural? The Elohim was a we from the beginning. So as we said, let us make humanity in our image according to our likeness. The we has always been the reality. And the illusion of separation, the illusion that there's someone divided from you that isn't a part of your we, that is the source of all the turmoil, all the strife. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've noticed this, that there's this impulse for togetherness that exists between us, even when we hate each other. The people who obsess the most about somebody is usually their enemy. Their enemy is the one that's thinking about them the most, looking into them the most, trying to figure them out the most, because there's this impulse that's always trying to draw us together, but the misguided mind of individualism that tells us that another person's existence is a threat to our existence disrupts us in the ways that we try to live into that impulse. So my hope for this time today is that we, as we listen to that word we and feel ourselves into that we realize that healing begins with we, that understanding begins with we, and that even when we want to choke the other we, it's a part of us. You know, I just want to choke this part of myself that's manifested in you right now. And we'll laugh a little bit. We'll work our way through it. So as I was saying, it's been we from the start. It's always been we. I was raised like super fundamentalist, like everyone's going to hell but us kind of person. I was raised that way. But I was also raised that I was supposed to love God with all my heart, my mind, and my soul, and to love my neighbor as myself. And those conflicted with each other, you know? There's a lot of things that we said that were very conflicting. And I was just like, okay, I want to believe because I'm with you all, I'm in your family and everything. I want to make sense. Let me ask you a few questions. Has anybody ever grown up in those spaces where you ask a few questions and they don't like questions? Yeah, they don't like questions. Because we're allergic to saying, I don't know. Because I don't know brings us to silence. And like I said earlier, we have an interesting relationship with silence. We think that it means the end of something instead of it being the beginning of everything. So I asked questions. I said, hey, you know I'm supposed to hate all these people, and I know we're also supposed to try to convert all these people, but we also say, in my tradition, like only 144,000 of us are ever going to get to this magical place. So why are we recruiting people? Because what if we recruit somebody that's better than us? What if you're like, 143,999 and you're like the last one? And then you meet some cool person, you convert them, they take your spot. And now you're going to the bad place. Make it make sense. And they said, don't question God. I said, I'm not questioning God, I'm questioning you. I'm asking you some questions I want to understand. And out of that understanding or that effort to understand, I got invited out of my church and into what we used to call the world. And when I came into the world, I met a lot of people just like me, trying to make sense out of this crazy place, trying to understand, wanting to be loved. And there's three things that I've observed in all of my encounters with people from all over the world, all kinds of languages, religions, all sorts of things. Most of us, we want to be loved, we want to belong, and I say we don't want to die is the last one, but some people feel awkward when I say the word die, so I just now change it to we want to stay alive. So we want to be loved, we want to belong, and we want to stay alive. And those impulses drive us to be very interesting people. And sometimes out of that impulse, we cause harm. We cause harm because we want to stay alive. And we're afraid that someone else is a threat to our aliveness, even when they're not. I know sometimes people get in arguments over things like, what's your favorite ice cream? What's your favorite music? And then they're like, how could you possibly like this ice cream and this music? And it feels like a threat to their own existence. I think this. How can you think a thing different than I think? One of us has to go. And I think that that's some kind of little crazy impulse toward oneness, because our idea of oneness is singular. We don't understand that oneness can be with, that it's one with the other, oneness with God, oneness with all the universe. And it still allows us to be who we are as a part of the we. In the best parts of the tradition that I grew up with, we talked about Jesus coming as Emmanuel. Does anybody know what Emmanuel means? Anyone? Anyone? No? Oh, there you go. I see a hand. God with us. Christ came as God with us to remind us that we are always with God. And that is our reality. There's a teaching in the Bible that sometimes people don't want to pick the thing up because it's been used to abuse people. But there's this piece from Paul where he says, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress? Anybody been through a tribulation or distress in here? Yeah? You have some tribulation and some distress? Some persecution? Any persecution happening around here? You ever been persecuted? Yeah, some people have been persecuted. Famine. Famine here. Says nakedness. I know everybody here has experienced nakedness. Maybe not the way they meant it here, but not even nakedness. Peril or sword. And then he says, for I'm persuaded that neither death, remember that I want to stay alive thing that makes us enemies of one another? He says, neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing, even the illusions that we make up, which are also created things, shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ. Nothing. Nothing can separate us. How would you live differently if you knew that nothing can separate you from all the love that is, the love that has always been, and the love that you are? Any courageous souls, since you're safe here, and you are safe, any courageous souls willing to say how they would live differently if they knew that they were always loved? You can just say one word. Yeah. More fully? Yeah, more fully. Because death can't even separate you from that love. How else would you live?
More compassionately.
More compassionately, absolutely. When you find that other people aren't a threat to the reality of who you are, it does open you up to more compassion, even with jerks. All right, anybody else?
Freely.
More freely? More freely. Oh, yep. I think two people said something at the same time. So,
I said without hesitation.
without hesitation and with peace. Look at all of these things that are already in us. Is there another hand back there? Fearlessly. All of these things are alive in you right now. And the only thing that separates you from you and you from us is the fear of separation. And that's something that does not actually exist. Can you imagine that? I feel like the Unity Spiritual Center is one place where I can say that this separation that we use to be individuals does not exist. Can y'all imagine that? Yeah? It's true. It's true. So I'm going to go through a poem that I turned into a song that we're going to hear later, and as a way of kind of bringing up some subjects. I know that this word silence of late has gotten kind of a bad rep. Like, how many people have heard the saying silence is violence? Have you heard it? You haven't? Well, if you're in activist circles, which I've been in activist circles, you're going to hear silence is violence. What they mean by it is silence can be complicity. So if you see some harm being done and you don't say anything, then you can be considered complicit in the violence that's being perpetrated. And a lot of times when people make that choice, and I do call it a choice, it's for survival, because that person's afraid of their own not being alive anymore. And I'm not going to put people down that make that choice. I'll just say that I think it's a choice. But there's other kinds of silences as well. There's this silence of knowing that no one's listening. Have you ever been in a situation where you wanted to share your heart, you wanted to explain yourself, but you knew that no one was going to listen? They just weren't paying attention. So there's that kind of silence, and there has some wisdom in that. And then there's another kind of silence, that meditative silence, that silence that rests in the truth of who we are, the love that always is, and it's at the core of your being. And that silence is where true peace and true love and all the things that we aspire to in our corporeal form, that's where that silence resides. That's a spiritual and holy silence. And that's the silence that we're going to lean into a little bit more. So the first lines are, silence is not violence. These words just rhyme. Violence is violence, and we see it all the time. Turn on the news, you see violence. We sensationalize violence because it does something to us. The word sensation is an intentional word because it brings us into our senses, and even though it's a misguided attempt of feeling alive, when we get this feeling of threat, it actually makes us feel a little bit more alive when we're living outside of our highest ideals. Just like if you ever watch a scary movie, or you get on a roller coaster, or you're not paying attention when you drive and you don't crash, you go, oh, 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 I'm alive. Oh. And for whatever reasons, nothing makes us feel more alive than the threat that we won't be. And so we get sensationalized and we get attracted to the idea of violence because we're obsessed with the fear of death. There's this concept called terror management theory, which basically says that most of us live a large portion of our lives obsessed with the notion of not being alive in various different ways. Whether it's an end of a relationship or ending any kind of terrible thing happening to somebody, we obsess ourselves with that, and when we do, we miss out on actually being alive. Let's stop doing that. Let's be alive. Howard Thurman said, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive and go do it, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. Some of you raised your hands and said what you would do if you felt that love, that you couldn't be separated. What makes you alive? And those of you who didn't raise your hand, who kept that in the silence of your own being, you also know what makes you come alive. So go do it. Next line. Some of us say nothing for a whole lot of reasons. Some because we're cowards, some because our words are out of season. In Ecclesiastes, it says there's a time and a place for everything. Sometimes it's a time to be a coward. Sometimes you got to get out of there. I've run away a couple times because I needed to. And there's been other times where I did not run away because if I did, I would be less than the person that I know I am. And then, as I said before, there are those times where you know that no one's listening. So why say anything? It's wisdom. It helps you keep your energy so that when someone is listening, you can actually offer what you have to share. And then there's a whole other reason for our unspoken ploys. When everyone is screaming, we choose not to add to the noise. Some of us are filled with pain. And when we're filled with pain, we can't hear anything. I know this, and I make the same mistake over and over again. When someone's upset, you say, calm down, right? It's good advice, and it isn't going to work because you have to wait, right? So some of us, when we come from a place of wisdom, we choose not to add to the noise because what's it going to do? It's like adding fuel to the fire. And I still do it sometimes. Then it says, instead we align with true peace, working from the inside out, so that a single sentence can break through the din of 10 million shouts. And din is a cacophonous noise if you don't know the word din. But when you are emerging from silence, does anybody have a family member that barely talks at family gatherings, or a friend or someone that barely says anything? And then the one time they say something, everyone's like, oh, they're about to say something. Let's see what they want to say. That's the silence that you want whatever you contribute to emerge from. Because if you speak from that place, that one sentence you say can drown out a whole cacophony of people just screaming and saying they know what's right and they know this and they know that. And then at the right time, emerging from silence, every word, your mouth can be saying words, but the power of that word is coming from this silence that just is. And people know. And sometimes we fall into that by mistake. Sometimes we're the recipient of it. But it's something that can be cultivated within us, so that every word you speak adds up to that holy silence. And it restores things. It brings things back to life. And that lives in each and every one of you. It lives in all of us. And so that's a silence that you can lean into. It's a strategy too uncommon, but often the only one that works, because the source of all the turmoil is often a battle of hurts versus hurts. All the things we see going on in the world, it's hurt people, hurting people. Every ism you can think of, believe you me, is my grandma. Believe you me. On the other side of that is a person in pain. And that person is screaming, I am in pain. And when they scream, I am in pain, it may come out saying, you stink, you're terrible, you did this to me, or whatever the case may be. But what they're really saying is, I am hurt. I have been invisible. I want to be loved, I want to belong, and I don't want to die, just like you. Does that mean that you walk out and hug everyone that's out to choke you? No, you got to have the wisdom. But if you can come from that stillness, it will open something up. I've had encounters. I'll tell you a little teeny piece of an encounter I had with a woman. I used to be a chaplain, and I walked into the hospital room because I was asked to go in and try to get this woman to go to rehab, physical rehab. And they said, can you get her to go? She's refusing to go. I said, I'll ask. So I walk in, and I go, hi, I'm the chaplain. And she goes, well, I'm a racist. And I could have said, what'd you say? You know, whatever the case may be. And I said, oh, really? How long have you been doing that? And she said, what? How long have I been doing racism? I said, yeah, how long you been doing racism? And she said, she looked really confused. So she was like, are you asking me when I converted to racism? I said, yeah, when'd you convert to racism? And then she was like, and she was just trying to figure out, because a lot of times when people ask you questions, you feel obligated to answer. So she's like, I don't know how to answer this. And then she just kind of goes, well, you know, I was married and blah, blah, blah. And I got divorced. I had to move in these apartments. And that's when I found out that all the things they say about poor people is true. You know, because she had this privileged life that she lost and ended up moving among the others. And she couldn't locate herself in that community, and so she decided to believe every horrible thing she could think of. And it was very stereotypical, like comical television racism. And then she sees my name tag, and it says Pedro Silva, and she goes, Pedro, is that your name? I said, yeah. So are you Latino? And then she goes, well, then you hate the blacks too. And I was like, oh, okay. And we went and had some interesting swerves and turns. And eventually, she decided she was going to go to rehab. I said, look, the reason why I'm here is to see if you go to rehab. And I asked her, I said, can I ask you one question? I let her just pour out all her crazy. And then I said, can I ask you one question? She said, yeah. I said, do you feel like life cheated you? And she was like, yeah, life cheated me. My life should have been this. And she compared the story of the life she gave herself with the life she had and found it lacking, and it was everybody else's fault, you know? And that's a lot of people. And so then as I was walking out from her room, I said, hey, when you're in rehab, I hope you find somebody and you fall in love. And then she was like, you're crazy. What kind of chaplain are you? And then I was just like, no, I just hope you fall in love. And then I walked out, and then I popped back in. I said, and I hope he's black. And then she was like, oh my God. And she was like, he's not a chaplain. That guy can't be a chaplain. But that was her pain, you know, talking, because a lot of people are coming from pain. So hurt people hurt people. Heal people heal. So the best that we can do for all of us is to master how we feel. If you can master how you feel, you can be the healing that comes to the world. When you feel pain and all those things, know that someone else out there is feeling the same way, and you may come across that person and they might try to take that out on you. And if you're hurting, then when that hurt person hurts you, then your hurt will hurt them, and it'll keep on going. But if you choose to master how you feel, then you become a healed person who heals people. And you don't have to put in a lot of work. You don't have to put out a sign. Just cultivate the silence within. Know that you're a part of the we, and that you can never be separated from the love that is. So here we go. Controlled by our emotions, the good we mean to do is distorted. Our goal is to bring about a better world, but our methods are contorted. How many times have you tried to do the right thing the wrong way? Many of us, we do it all the time. We have the right thing, you know, we want to bring about peace. You know, I think that some of the people who create war, in their minds, they're like, I know how to create peace, kill everybody that isn't me. My dad one time said, that's why I said it's funny that my dad and I are, in a way, doing this message together. I remember one time my dad was just questioning why I turned out the way I was, and you know, I wasn't the manly man type person he wanted me to be. And he said, you know, I have a lot of good ideas. I was like, that's awesome. And he goes, and I think if everyone thought like me, the world would be a better place. I was like, I think everyone thinks that. That's not unique. And then he was just like, You know, a lot of us think that, and we want peace, and sometimes we think peace comes by silencing someone else. But it's just a misguided attempt to try to bring about peace. But if we come from true peace, and we show people a world where true peace is, and how we are with each other, and build something attractive, then I think we can see people coming toward that. This one guy, Buckminster Fuller, I don't know if you heard of him. One of my mentors, Marshall Thurber, who one of our friends, a friend of mine, we share Marshall as a friend. He talks a lot about Bucky. And one of the things Buckminster Fuller said is that you cannot change the existing reality, you can't fight the existing reality to change things. You have to make something better and make the old thing obsolete. And so that's the invitation for us, to make something better that makes the old thing obsolete. Because pain cannot undo one's pain, though it may keep it at bay. But this is only temporary. The pendulum will always swing the other way. And so if you use your pain to stop someone from hurting you, best believe it's going to come back around. Maybe you're tired, you know, you get sleepy. They're like, oh, you're weakened down. And then it comes back around. So be mindful. And when it does, there'll be a backlash. This is always the way it goes. Like peaks and troughs in an ocean, this is just the way it flows. It'll be no other way, no matter how hard we try. Because just like if you try to push a wave, your efforts will always be denied. And so if you come trying to push the ocean, who's going to win? Not you. You come against a tidal wave, I got all the power, I'm paying, and it's not going to do anything. You're going to get knocked over. That's what happens. But don't be discouraged. Just pay attention to the patterns. And in time, you'll be able to anticipate the unfolding of all that matters. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And the only response will be to surrender. But that comes from accepting that your best was never good enough so that a better way can enter. A way that acts from stillness, that speaks from the cataclysmic sound of silence, the undoing that undoes all that humans contrived until there is no such thing as violence. In the stillness, in the silence, in the peace out of which we all emerge, violence does not exist. We can create that illusion, but just like Paul said, nothing we create can separate us from the love of God, the love of Christ, the love of us as our true selves. And so, despite what we might see, despite the expressions of illusion, I invite you to get still when you can, live from that silence, be a we, and live the love that you come from, because that is your reality and your inheritance. Thank you.
Silence is not violence, these words just rhyme. Violence is violence, and we see it all the time. Some of us say nothing for a whole lot of reasons. Some because we're cowards, some because our words are out of season. And there's a whole other reason for our unspoken voice. When everyone is screaming, we choose not to add to the noise. Instead we align with true peace, working from the inside out, so that a single sentence can break through the din of 10 million shouts. It's a strategy too uncommon, but often the only one that works. Because the source of all the turmoil is often a battle of hurts versus hurts. Hurt people, heal people, heal. So the best we can do for all of us is to master how we feel. Controlled by our emotions, the good we mean to do's distorted. Our goal is to bring about a better world, but our methods are contorted. Pain cannot undo one's pain, though it may keep it at bay. But this is only temporary, the pendulum will always swing the other way. And when it does, there will be a backlash. This is always the way it goes. Like peaks and troughs in an ocean, this is just the way it flows. It will be no other way, no matter how hard we try. Because just like if you try to push away, your efforts will always be denied. But do not be discouraged, just pay attention to the patterns. In time you will be able to anticipate the unfolding of all that matters. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The only response is to surrender. Accept your best was never good enough, so the better way can enter. A way that acts from stillness, that speaks from the cataclysmic sound of silence. The undoing that undoes all that humans contrived, until there is no such thing as violence. Hurt people, heal people, heal. So the best we can do for all of us is to master how we feel. Controlled by our emotions, the good we mean to do's distorted. Our goal is to bring about a better world, but our methods are contorted. pain cannot undo one's pain, though it may keep it at bay. But this is only temporary. The pendulum will always swing the other way. And when it does, there will be a backlash. This is always the way it goes. Like peaks and troughs in an ocean, this is just the way it flows. Oh, it will be no